Hello and welcome to episode 11. Welcome back to another episode of the A Lack of Interesting Conversation with me, your host, Trey Mendenhall. I want to thank you again for joining me today here on the podcast. Again, we are available every Wednesday. We get a new episode every Wednesday at 8 a.m. That's when I upload to your podcast platform and to YouTube, which is the exclusive home of our video version of this podcast. You can follow me on social media on Instagram and TikTok, both at Trey Mendenhall, as that is where I post little teasers and clips of the podcast here to kind of build some hype. Hopefully, that gets you excited for the podcast as I did. I released a little teaser Monday. Also, the podcast itself has its own Facebook page. That is the only social media that the podcast is on right now. So that is the Lack of Interesting Conversation podcast Facebook page. You can just find us on Facebook. Just search us up there and give us a follow. Also post when it uploads on there as well. And the link and all my social media that I gave out. You can follow the link to our RSS website to find the podcast platform in which you um, have a preference for, including the big three where you listen to it on Spotify, Amazon Music, excuse me, sorry, and Apple Podcasts. On YouTube, you can find us at The Lack of Interesting Conversation. Just search us up on YouTube, and you should be able to find us there. As this, as I continue to grow this podcast and morph us into, I guess, whatever God wants this podcast to do, just pray you guys continue to listen. If there's any feedback, I would appreciate it if you would give me feedback. If there's anything, I guess, you think I could do better or anything like that, any topics you want me to cover, that as well. As last week, I said we were starting a new series called Top Five. Last week was I gave my top five Striper albums. That is probably my favorite rock band, probably metal band, especially in the Christian space. That they, my goodness, they've been rocking the world, which ironically is a song off "To the Hell with the Devil," with a great one, by the way. For I think a little over 40 years. As I know, a couple years ago, they were touring for their 40th anniversary, which I got to see. That was the last time I saw them, actually. Put on a heck of a show, covered all 40 years, every album, including the last, I guess, their official last studio album, When We Were Kings. I know they're currently in the studio. I think they got everything tracked. Michael's vocals might be the last thing. Michael Sweet's vocals might be the last thing that needs to be done. Besides, obviously, mixing and the album, putting everything together to make it sound like a song. But I know that will release this fall, like it normally does when Striper releases new music nowadays. Um, but as I said, for the top five, today we continue that series as I give my top five sports video games. Now, there have been a ton of sports video games released, dating all the way back to obviously like the Atari and the computer days, the old floppy disk. I remember at my grandma's having like a computer with a ton of floppy disk games, and they were playing. I think it was Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird, or might have been Dr. J versus Larry Bird. I remember that, having fun with that back in the day. I don't exactly remember what my very first sports video game I ever played was, but obviously that's the kind of video games I personally like to play. Although I do like playing single player story games, I've always been a sports gamer. I just love playing sports video games. I'm a huge sports fan anyway. But before we go to the topic, if you are new here, welcome, and I thank you for giving me a listen for the first time. Make sure you go back and listen to our other 10 episodes. You can, like I said before, you can find them on any podcast platform that you prefer. So let's move in to my top 5 sports video games. At number 5 here, um, this is my favorite version of this game. I'm pretty sure I got this game for Christmas, but Madden 2005. Ray Lewis on the cover. And believe it or not, if you're a newer gamer, they used to give um, little booklets, and they used to be pretty thick too, as you can see here. Teaches you how to play the game, teaches you the controls, explains uh, all the different features in the game. Even I missed a disc art that used to come on these games. Get Ray Lewis there on the cover. I know every time in these old EA Sports video games, they used to come like with they call them cameos, which I guess I didn't really know that's what they were until I loaded these games up um, to check them out, as it had been a while since I play them in on my PS2. I've always been a PlayStation guy, so but anyway, Madden 2005, released on August 10th, 2004, from obviously EA Sports, available on the PS2, the Xbox, which Madden '05 was the first Madden on the Xbox to have the Xbox Live feature, which was an obvious game changer, um, which also is why PlayStation Plus exists now, as Xbox was definitely ahead of the game with a lot playing online. But obviously, on the PlayStation 2, this little um, logo here on the bottom left-hand corner here lets you know you can play it online on the PlayStation 2 as well. And this was on the GameCube. This also Madden '05 is the very last Madden to release on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. Also, there was a DS version, a Game Boy Advance version, a mobile phone version, and a Tap Wave Zodiac, which is a very fancy pager, as it is a personal assistant and a mobile console, basically like a handheld console, basically inside a pager, since it's a personal assistant. But this Madden '05 was the game. I know back during that time, and this is peak EA Sports in my opinion. Uh, when whoever was on the cover, whether that would be a offensive player or a defensive player, that would be a sign of what the new feature was that year. And Madden '05 is the Madden that introduced the hit stick, which has become since then a very popular feature. Allow you to make big, huge hits, but obviously if you miss, you still paid for it. It was it's definitely very fun. Had like most of these games back then, had an awesome soundtrack. It also featured the debut of American Idiot from Green Day, which I didn't know this, but evidently if you were one of the first people to buy it when it came out, that was the first time you heard American Idiot, because that was in the game before it was released as a single. A pretty cool fun fact. Um, Other songs on there, like the clincher from Chevelle, "Open Your Eyes" Alter Bridge, "From Out of Nowhere" from Faith No More, "Take Me Out" from Franz Ferdinand, and "Same Direction" by Hoobastank. Uh, some of these bands aren't around anymore, so kind of dates me. But in this one, the commentators were still Al Michaels, John Madden were still the commentators on these games, which sometimes, in my opinion, is still better than some of the commentaries in some of these previous sports video games. Although, in my opinion, 2K definitely has the advantage when it comes to commentary in these games here recently. Um, the highest rating that Madden 05 got that year was from IGN, a 9.5 out of 10. And for a Madden game to receive such a high rating, especially nowadays, is shocking. But back then, EA knew what they were doing, and um, they weren't as disgusted uh, as as they are now. But also, some of the awards it was get nominated for was the best console sports game at the 8th annual Interactive Achievement Awards. That did not win that. It lost to a game that is also on this list coming up, and I will not give that away. But back then, brand new games, usually released for $50, $49.99. But because of their competitor that year releasing their game at a much lower price, that's really scared them. It also um, ticked the NFL off. So, like in December around Christmas, like now, even nowadays, they lowered the price to $29.99, with $30 pretty much, um, which is pretty cool. End up selling 4 million copies. And also, I believe this Madden is the first Madden to have a collector's edition, but I could be wrong. Um, Also, on that game, on the collector's edition, you also had the ability to play Madden 98 and Madden 01 to celebrate the 15th year anniversary of the Madden NFL series, which is pretty incredible that on a single disc that you could have two other games on a disc to be able to play, which is pretty cool to be honest. Um, you definitely won't see that happen nowadays. Um, and this was Madden Moments. I don't know if you remember Madden Moments from like the early 2010 games, but this Madden 05 was the first time that ever um, appeared in a Madden game, but also um, on this Madden Moments, you were able to play I think 20 moments from the history of the NFL. So you had uh, moments throughout history that you could play and recreate, which is pretty cool. Also, create a fan was new this year. You could also create a player, and also you can create a team. So you didn't need like in the Madden and college football video games nowadays. Um, you did not need Team Builder. The game create a team was actually in the game. You could actually just basically create there on while you're playing the game, load them up into your franchise or exhibition game, and basically go from there. Um, I remember doing that. I remember creating my local high school team and putting in the Madden 05 back then. And then creating me, making sure I looked like I gave myself like the biggest muscles and I could throw the farthest and run the fastest. Yeah, I just remember having so much fun playing this game, to be completely honest. And franchise mode was deep. Also, just like in Dynasty and the older NCAA games, you had if you played those, you had um, the ESPN / Sports Illustrated covers. And Dynasty in Madden 05 this introduced you had for your news around the league, you had the USA Today sports newspaper. So like you had the main headline with a picture of the team it was talking about, the couple players. Then you had like news on the sides and on the top around the league. Then each team had their local newspaper as well. Um, so you could, after you check your like national news, sports news in the NFL, you could go down to your local newspaper and see what they're saying about your team. So whether that would be contracts, um, winning streaks, if you break a record, sign free agents, draft, stuff like that, win the Super Bowl, obviously. Go undefeated, all that would be right there. To be a little article. You just click on the headline, and it goes in and gives you a little headline article about it, which is pretty cool. And now in this year in Madden 05 also, um, in franchise, you had the mini games which returned this year in Madden, but also you could control like how much your concessions were. You can build a new stadium, stuff like that in these old Maddens in Madden 05. And then also, I think probably my favorite feature of the game this year was the addition of the Tony Bruno show. So you had a look, basically after every week there would be a Tony Bruno show on EA Sports Radio, load up there, and he would interview people like coaches and have trivia and have fans call into the show, give his thoughts on what's going on, stuff like that. Especially on your season's going, you could be mentioned on the show on his show, which is pretty cool. Just stuff like that just make so much nostalgia for me. Honestly, I just love like how much depth these old games used to have, and that is seriously lacking in today's games. So, also there was back then there also included like EA used to include like trailers um, in their games for upcoming releases. Also, there's like video tutorials on how to play the game, especially when it comes to introducing new features, how to use that new feature and stuff like that. And also, Madden '05. I guess I didn't realize this until I loaded it up the other day. Includes an NFL Street demo, which if you're from this era, if you grew up in this era of video gaming, NFL Street. That's another great game from uh, EA Sports Big. Sure do miss that. I wish they would come out and release some games like that again. But a lot of these older games, especially since they come out with like modders and stuff, have given these new games new life. If you have a computer or like a console that you can download stuff on, I know some people make like PS3s, 360s, stuff like that can play the modded version of these games. But obviously they have updated rosters and stuff like that, updated stadiums, updated uniforms, all that. But you still obviously get the gameplay of these older games. And this is my original copy of this game. Um, I believe my mom got this for me for Christmas. This has to be the only way I got that. But as we move on, number 4, Four Horsemen, is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Again, this is my original copy of this game. I remember my mom getting this for me and being with her at CVS. If you can believe it, CVS used to sell video games. Obviously, this is the greatest hits version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This is the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Um, I think they have to sell a certain amount of copies in order for PlayStation to call them greatest hits. But obviously, this sold a ton, which is why this is also. They end up changing the color of their greatest hits later, as they're obviously the original PlayStation logo. If this was the non-greatest hits version, this would be black. Um, but this is inside. There's not much. Obviously, it's just a plain disc. Says Tony Hawk's Pro Skater from Neversoft and Activision, uh, which I know not too many people are a fan of Activision anymore. But these video game companies haven't always been bad. But Tony Hawk's Pro Skater released on September 29th, 1999. Aside from the PlayStation, I did have the N64 version. I know Both of those consoles, those versions have two different openings. I know on the N64 is just and the opening features the song "Police Truck" from the Dead Kennedys, which I did not realize was such a vulgar song until I looked up the lyrics. Um, but on the N64 version, they have gameplay introducing each um, skater, and on the PlayStation 1 version, there's actually video footage of each skater in the game. Aside from those two, there was also a Game Boy Color release for this game, a Sega Dreamcast version, which I for some reason I did not know, an Engage uh, version, which was basically like a cell phone, which you could play games on, and a brew. I don't even know what that is. It just that's what it said. Obviously, the soundtrack is an all-time one, featuring, like I said, the Dead Kennedys, Goldfinger, Primus, Suicidal Tendencies, and more. Tony Hawk, honestly, it was released at the peak of the extreme sports craze there. I know in the 90s you had the introduction of X Games, roller. Even Disney got into it with a movie called Brink, which is an all-timer in my opinion. I love that movie. That movie's great. It's available on Disney Plus. And no, they are not sponsoring this podcast. That's a free plug. But I know this game, Activision and NeverSoft started developing this game in like 1998. I know Sega's Top Skater, which released in '97, was a big influence as during their lunch breaks when developing this game, they would go to a local bowling alley to play Top Skater. And they one thing they noticed is they wanted to make Tony Hawk fun, and then I certainly agree that they did for sure. They made this game a heck of a lot of fun. It's so much fun to play. I know it's been recently remastered. Personally, I'm not a fan of the remaster. I think it just I think he's too. Honestly, I think the skaters are too slow. They feel like they're moving in quicksand or something like that. I just don't understand um, why that is. I don't even. I don't even know how to go faster, even though I've looked it up several times. But I remember in September, but also in while developing the game, they realized they needed a big name skater for this game to help promote it. And in September '98, Activision contacted and set up a meeting with Tony Hawk, which they initially offered him a one-time, I guess, buyout of his name and likeness, but he turned that down in favor for royalties, basically getting a chunk of each game sale. Which after that, eventually he ended up earning like 10 times more than the initial offer. So he was definitely smart to make that call. The other skaters aside from Tony Hawk in the game, Bob Burnquist, Kareem Campbell, Rune Gildberg, Bucky Elastic, Chad Musket, uh, Andrew Reynolds, Jeff Roki, Elsa Streamer, which is the only female skater in this game, and Jamie Thomas. There was a ton of good reviews for this game. Rave reviews. Um, also, became the third best-selling game of November '99. So that tells you how, I guess, honestly, the word of mouth picked up right away, telling you how much fun this game was to play. Then, like a year later, during the week of November 19th and through the 26th, it was the sixth best-selling game on the N64 as a '01. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater sold 3.5 million copies, helping also bring skating to a global audience. Obviously, each arena or skate park has to be unlocked via like a career mode where you have to collect a total of 5 videotapes, but you didn't need to collect all 5. to unlock the next park, which obviously you still had to get a certain amount. I know my favorite park on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is the warehouse, which is the one level you get when you turn on the game, load into it. It's my favorite one. I just love that I can rack up a bunch of points still, even all these years later. That's probably why I think it's so much fun. But then we're going to move on here to number 3, which is another PlayStation 2. This is PlayStation 2's version of the greatest hits. Obviously, it's like a maroon color. And this is NBA Street from EA Sports Big, which I mentioned before. Basically, this is their EA Sports Big was EA's like extreme street sport game studio. And honestly, this NBA Street, even though this wasn't the first game released from this studio, which is SSX Tricky or SSX. But with NBA Street, that kicked it off. That's honestly what led to FIFA Street, NFL Street. But that's what started it all. And I just got done playing their career mode, which is called City Circuit, which you get to start out with all people, this guy right there, Michael Jordan, the GOAT, by the way, on your team. But which is pretty cool, which helps. But as you go forward in City Circuit, you get to unlock all the famous street ball courts like Rucker Park. That's one big one. Also, Vancouver, BC, which is called Pacific Boulevard, Beacon Hill in Boston, South Beach, obviously Miami, Broad Street in Philadelphia, Route 66 in Northern Arizona, the Yard in Detroit, the Cage in Manhattan, New York, Venice Beach in Venice, California, the Loop in Chicago, Yakatomi Plaza in LA, Fort Point in San Francisco, and obviously I said Record Park, which is in Harlem. But NBA Street for the PS2 anyway was released on June 19th, 2001. Then the GameCube version of the game released on February 15th, 2002. One of these legends, which you get to come up against in the City Circuit, which is Stretch, which may remind some players of Dr. J, Julius Erving. But I think he was more of an inspiration than a complete rip-off of Dr. J. I know on the GameCube version, by that time, Michael Jordan had announced his return to the NBA to play for the Wizards. So at the end of the City Circuit, Michael Jordan, that ended up being the final boss, basically, of the City Circuit. You got to beat him to complete the game. So at the end of that on the GameCube version, they replaced him with Stretch because Mike was on the Wizards by then. All 29 teams at the time in the NBA are featured here, which just includes 5, as is a 3-on-3 street ball with street ball rules, basically meaning mid-range, dunks, layups, are all worth 1 point, 3-pointers worth 2. Super fun and stuff. You can honestly, this is a start. I don't know if anybody's played NBA Ballers or not. With obviously you can bounce the ball off your opponent's head in that game, but really I think all that really started with NBA Street, as you can do like crazy crossovers and all kinds of stuff like that. You can alley-oop to yourself in the game. You can alley-oop to your teammates as they just jump crazy high in the air, which is pretty crazy. But like after in City Circuit, excuse me, you get to pick player or players off of a team in which you beat, which you can have a total of 17 on your team. Which as you go further once you have the cap in which how many players you can have. If you want a player from the team that you just beat, you have to get rid of someone that's already on your team. But also, there is a creative player in this game, as like most of these sports games back then had featured a creative player, which is pretty cool. Um, but as I was saying before with the legends, Stretch, obviously the a cover star, Biggs, Bonafide, Drake, DJ, Takashi, um, which is all the different players. You can also those would be like the boss battle at a certain park, and if you can beat them, you can even put them on your team too. Uh, like the highest rating of the game uh, was like the PS2 PlayStation Magazine. The PS2 version was 9.3 out of 10. I don't remember, but I have it written down. Someone gave this game 4.5 out of 5, which is honestly huge. That's a really good rating. By August '06, the PS2 version had sold 1.5 million copies, earning 57 million. Also, this game, NBA Street, was nominated for the best sports game, alternatives game at the best and worst of the '01 awards, which was an award show by GameSpot. Um, and also was nominated for best Canadian Game of the Year and best extreme sports game at the Electric Playground Blisters Awards. And then now we go to number 2, which is my this is my favorite version of this in this series. I just remember getting this at my local Kmart after I remember a lot of my teammates. It was during 2 days. Is really the first time I heard about this game, or even um, and they were talking about how much fun it was and stuff like that. So I decided to go pick it up, and it is NCAA Football '06 Race for the Heisman. Heisman, excuse me. Released on July 12th, 2005. It also features Desmond Howard on the cover. This is the first ever legend on this game cover. This is the inside, obviously, with the cover art here. As usually in the not now in the new college football series, obviously they feature current players, but before they were not allowed. The players weren't allowed to get paid back then. They had featured usually like the most well-known college football player from the previous year that had just graduated and gone to the NFL. I know a few times they had the previous year's Heisman Trophy winner on the cover. Like I know the year before this one in NCAA '05, Larry Fitzgerald was on that. But my first time ever playing an NCAA game was NCAA '04, and that had Carson Palmer on the cover, which is cool. And also '06, I know the soundtrack is talked about a lot as a lot of people's favorites, as it is the only NCAA game to feature copyright music that songs like you would hear on the radio, as really all the other ones just include fight songs from each school in the game. As still back then, they had FCS teams in the game. I know they still don't have those teams now, even after they moved console generations up to like the PS3 360 era. They never had FCS teams in those games either. So this is kind of the last bastion of that type of era. But also, the main menu, when you go in there, when you load up the game, you got to pick your favorite school. But the main menu, it featured highlights from legends such as Peyton Manning, Bo Jackson, Barry Sanders, and Archie Griffin, just to name a few of them. There's plenty more in there. But also, this was the first game to ever introduce a career mode into a sports game, or at least a football game anyway, as it's called, obviously, Race for the Heisman. That was That is the career mode in this game. And Madden 06 introduced Superstar mode, and that was the first time Superstar mode ever existed there. As in, to start this out, that mode out, you get a little video and introduction by Brad Nessler, who is basically the main commentator of the game. Also features Kurt Herbstreit and Lee Corso. Yes, Lee Corso used to be a commentator in these old NCAA games. I know you have like Ask Coach, and then that when you're picking a play there, when in this game with Lee Corso being there, he would give feedback as to why he wanted you to run that play, which is pretty cool, as that doesn't happen anymore. Then after that video, you get basically your one of many like high schoolers trying out basically in like a big drill. And you could have all the positions. You could be a quarterback, a halfback, a receiver, an O lineman, a D lineman, a linebacker, a defensive back. And your goal was to do the best as you could. You could to get the as many scholarship offers as you could. And at the end of that, there would be a list of schools in which you could choose from. And then you would go to that school and have a dorm room there, which would get better each year, and depending on how you played as well. Then at the end of that, you could transfer your player over to Madden, which also you could transfer your draft classes out of Dynasty into Madden as well, which obviously we can't do, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with legal reasons as to why with the NIL and all that stuff. But hopefully they're able to get that figured out in these new games. But I know like in Dynasty in these old ones, you could actually suspend players. There'd be like a pop up, hey, this player violated this rule and all that stuff. So like they would give you like a recommendation on how much of a game they would miss, like a half, a quarter, or multiple games. But if you didn't do that, your school could literally get put on probation. I know I've seen that happen in some dynasties on YouTube, like Miles Dawkins, 24/7 stuff like that. I think his school he just ignored it and just his school ended up getting put on probation. There's stuff like that that's missing, and also this was the game that introduced impact players to the game, which they had dots, little white dots underneath of them, like 3 you could have was the majority of players you could have as an impact player. And when they were in the zone, it would pulse, and then you could hit like a juke move or anything, and like the camera would zoom in and stop, and basically your player could be unstoppable for like a second, especially on the computer side. Is if you're not slowing down their impact player and you let him get going, that you you're in trouble. But so many good memories about this. It was released on the PS2 and the Xbox. By July 06, a year later, the game had sold 1.2 million copies, earned $56 million. Next Generation ranked it as the 40th highest selling game to launch in between January 2000 and July 06 in the US, and is ranked as a lot of people's favorite of the entire college football series. Is ranked always up there. Great great ratings, like Metacritic. Both versions are 87 out of 100. And I know, like I said before, these old games always had like an opening, like what they call cameos, both in Madden 05 and this 06. You have an ability to watch all of them. And I know, as I said, in the Madden 05, they had an NFL Street demo for NCAA 06. They had a March Madness 05 demo you could play, which is pretty insane, to be honest, that you could have demos like that inside these games, letting players of these games be able to test these other games in your gaming company's catalog So they can obviously, if they fall in love with that game, they can go out and pick it up, which is pretty cool. And honestly, a lot of these games that don't sell well and stuff like that, if they have other games they release, maybe that could boost up a sell or something, or get them a sell on a game that's struggling to sell. But then here's, as we go to my number one favorite sports video game of all time, we go to a game that since its release its legacy has only gotten bigger. And that's really because nothing still, all these years later, still nothing compares to it. It was such ahead of its time in terms of everything they put in this game. It's just crazy that let's see, 22 years, it'll be 22 years this year later, that company has still not caught up to all the features that this game features. And I know I teased this. Obviously, this is in the teaser video, but here we go. ESPN NFL 2K5. Obviously, TO on the cover. Man, like the cover art here on the disc art, the booklet, a little thing where you could win, like be able to go to the ESPN video games gaming squad. They used to have like a ESPN like restaurant or something in New York. But I remember how I first, that's still my original copy of the game too. But I remember how I found out about this game was a commercial. It was a TO commercial. I believe he shaves his head in the commercial, but I'm not 100% sure. Not like it matters. But I remember TO being in the commercial, and I think there was some gameplay. Then at the end, flashed 1999, which for was an absolute ballsy move by 2K to release a brand new video game for $20. You would never see that nowadays, no way. And the rest of 2K5's sports library from NBA, NHL, but all those were released for $20. I know I have MLB 2K5 and NBA 2K5 in my gaming catalog, my personal game catalog anyway. But with that price tag, obviously, this game was released July 20th, 2004. So about almost a month before, a little over 2 weeks before Madden 05, which obviously scared the heck out of EA because your only competitor that's released their version of the game, $30 cheaper than yours, that hasn't even released yet, but that also made the NFL mad. They were not happy, and also it was probably part of the reason why they wanted to do the exclusive license, and which obviously is EA's license. For they can release a simulation version of the NFL in the video game form. But 2K virtual concepts, they went all in. It's like, I don't know. It's like they knew, hey, this is our last chance, so let's throw anything at the wall, see what sticks. They took full advantage of the ESPN license they had, the menus, the background, I believe, was like the old Sports Center desk. They had the ESPN music throughout on the menus and stuff. It would play throughout. And then when you would go to load into a game, there would be boom. You would have this guy right there, Chris Berman, as many of you know, for people around my age, and if you grew up then, was a huge part of the NFL on ESPN. You'd have him basically introducing your matchup, and then you would have on the commentary team, which is fictional commentators of Dan Stevens, played by Terry McGovern, and Peter O'Keefe, which is voiced by Jay Stylen. That even back then, 2K had the upper leg on commentary. They would just not call the action, but they would also talk about your players and things that happened throughout the game that uh, I guess like EA commentary would not notice. Like talking about um, like my favorite one was when like a player you get a pick six or something, and Peter O'Keefe said, "I bet his mom has the VCR going." Definitely throwback to the time in which this was released. Obviously, videotapes were still very big back then, even though DVDs were making their had pretty much became the top version of home video at that time. Um, but the stuff like that, then like at halftime, you would have Boomer, Chris Berman break down basically the first half, show on the play, talk about the stats, talk about the teams, if one team's dominating or how close the game was. And on the PS2 version, I know they would show steals of like the action, but I guess on the Xbox version, they would actually show highlights of your game, highlights of the key plays in the halftime show, and then like he would also be there at the post game. It would go talk about how the game went, who came out on top, then throw it to Susie Colbert, uh, and she was the sideline reporter, and then obviously if there was an injury or anything like that during the game, or even the weather, she would go in and talk about that and update players you on your injured player. But at the end of the game, she would talk to the player of the game. And like in this franchise mode, you can do all kinds of things. So such a deep mode. But my favorite part of the franchise, which still hasn't yet to be uh, replicated, as I know they tried to do it this year in Madden with the post game show. But after basically you play your game, then you simulate to the next week. If you put on a PlayStation controller, you can press select, um, and then that would take you to Sports Center, hosted by Chris Berman, and he would go and talk about that week's games, show highlights, whether and have bring in Trey Wingo if there was an injury or a key free agent signing for a team. And then later in the year, when towards the end of the year, obviously getting towards the draft, he'd have Mel Kiper come in, break down draft prospects, just stuff like that. So ahead of its time, man. And I I understand EA being scared, and like they still have yet to even replicate most of this stuff. And it's fact that it's 22 years later is absolutely ridiculous that they still can't do that. And then when this game released, ESPN was celebrating its 25th anniversary, basically like kind of like Madden moments in Madden '05. But they had um, 25 moments throughout NFL history, and you can kind of try and rewrite history and or recreate history. Like they had like the Ice Bowl, the Immaculate Reception, the catch in Cleveland by with the John Elway, stuff like that. You had creative player. The creative team, in my opinion, was especially in these old 2K games, is just lacking. In my opinion, that's probably one of the negatives. Might be my only negative, to be honest, about this game. Um, this is, I mean, 2K5 has been referred to as King Arthur of video games. Heck, I mean, my goodness, this game's always ranked on the top sports video games of all time. Even Time magazine, they ranked like the 100 best video games of all time across. It doesn't matter what kind of video game it was on that list, and they put NFL 2K5 at 41. So that honestly should tell you how big of how good this game is and how important this game was. And the fact that all these years later, also that that's these new Madden releases are still compared to this game because of stuff that's missing. Heck, even stuff that's missing from previous Madden releases is crazy. It's it still haunts EA. It's crazy, honestly. Man, it makes you wonder if an NFL hadn't given that exclusive license to EA, would Madden have gone the way of NBA Live? Obviously, with 2K was able to continue to make NFL games. As I know, they recently, the NFL and 2K finally got back into business, but they released a mobile game, and that mobile game doesn't even, I don't even think it's online anymore. So, but I know they were supposed to release it like a street version of the game or something like that, but I don't even think that's even happening anymore. It's just crazy. But anyway, uh, I would love to hear your top 5 video games or sports video games anyway. If you agree with my list, if you think my list is good, even if you think it sucks, let me hear it down in the comments. Either that comments would be on the Facebook page, on the clips I show on the social media, on Spotify, or the YouTube channel. Uh, I would just love to hear your feedback and hear what you think. But anyway, uh, I will. In closing, I just want to remind you guys that Jesus loves you. He died for you on the cross. He shed his blood for you, so you may be able to be free and have a relationship with him. So, if you would just give your life to him, he can set you free from your past mistakes. Jesus went to the cross and died for you so you could be free. And if you just believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that he is Lord, you shall be saved. Anyway, thank you for joining me again here on the Lack of Interesting Conversation podcast.